Nia Carter had mastered the art of being invisible. 2 jobs, 1 son, 0 trouble. That was her life in the new neighborhood. But when men in matching jackets started calling themselves community protectors and decided a single black mother didn't belong on their street, invisibility stopped being protection. They followed her, threatened her, cornered her at the community fair with phones recording, expecting her to break or run. What they didn't know was that Nia had spent years hiding a past she never wanted to use again. And when they shoved her 9-year-old son Malik to the ground, something inside her shifted. Today, these men were about to discover they'd made a fatal mistake. They'd chosen the wrong mother to intimidate. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The alarm clock screamed at 5:30 in the morning, and Nia Carter's hand shot out from under the covers to silence it before the sound could wake Malik. She lay there for 3 seconds, eyes closed, gathering the energy she'd need for the next 18 hours. 2 jobs, 1 son, 0 margin for error. Her feet hit the cold floor, and the routine began. In the kitchen, she moved through breakfast preparation with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Toast, scrambled eggs, orange juice poured into Malik's favorite cup with the dinosaurs on it. She glanced at the clock. 6:15. She was already behind. "Malik, baby, time to get up," she called down the hallway, her voice gentle despite the exhaustion that lived permanently in her bones. She heard the shuffle of small feet, and then her 9-year-old son appeared in the doorway, eyes half closed, his hair sticking up in the back. He didn't complain. He never did. That was what broke her heart most days. "Morning, Mom," he mumbled, sliding into his chair at their small kitchen table. "Morning, sweetheart." She set his plate in front of him, then grabbed her own piece of toast to eat, standing up while she packed his lunch. Peanut butter and jelly, an apple, a juice box. The same thing every day because it was all she could afford this week. Malik ate in silence, watching her move through the apartment like a woman on a mission. He was good at reading her moods. Too good for a kid his age. "You working late again?" he asked quietly. "Just until 7. Mrs. Patterson from downstairs said she'll check on you at 5:30. He nodded, chewing slowly. Then he set down his fork and looked at his shoes by the door. They were already tied. He'd done it himself while she was in the shower because he knew she was running late. Again, Nia noticed and felt the familiar sting behind her eyes. "Baby, I'm sorry. I should have." "It's okay, Mom." He picked up his fork and kept eating. "I'm 9. I could tie my own shoes." She knelt beside his chair and kissed the top of his head. "I know you can. You're so grown up. Sometimes I forget you're not still my little baby." He smiled at that, just a little, and it was enough to keep her going for the next few hours. By 6:40, they were out the door, walking the 4 blocks to his school. The morning air was cool, almost pleasant, but Nia's attention wasn't on the weather. Her eyes scanned the street ahead, the parked cars, the alleys between buildings. It had become automatic in the past few weeks. Watching, waiting for something she couldn't name yet. That was when she saw it again. The pickup truck, dark blue, lifted suspension, tinted windows. It was parked at the corner of Maple and 3rd, engine idling. The same truck she'd seen 3 times in the past week. Always near her block. Always idling. Always with shadows inside that watched her walk by. Nia's grip on Malik's hand tightened just slightly, and she kept her eyes forward. Don't look. Don't engage. Survive. They passed the truck, and she felt the weight of eyes on her back like a physical pressure. Malik didn't notice. He was talking about a project at school, something about the solar system. She made the appropriate sounds of interest, nodding at the right moments, but her mind was cataloging every detail. The license plate, the dent in the rear bumper, the way the driver's side window was rolled down just enough for someone to watch without being seen clearly. When they reached the school gates, she crouched down to Malik's level and fixed his collar. "Have a good day, okay? I love you." "Love you too, Mom." He hugged her quickly, then ran off to join a group of kids on the playground. Nia stood there for a moment, watching him laugh with his friends, and tried to ignore the knot of fear in her stomach. She turned and walked back the way she came. The truck was gone. Her first job was at a medical office downtown, answering phones and filing paperwork. Her second job was waitressing at a diner 4 nights a week. Between the two, she barely made enough to cover rent, food, and the basics. There was no room for emergencies, no room for mistakes, no room to run if things got worse. That evening, after picking Malik up from school and heating up leftover spaghetti for dinner, Nia decided they needed milk. The corner store was only 2 blocks away, and Malik wanted to come with her. She almost said no, but he'd been cooped up inside all afternoon, and she couldn't keep him locked away forever. "Okay," she said, "but stay close to me." The store was small, cramped, with narrow aisles and fluorescent lights that buzzed too loudly. Nia grabbed a gallon of milk from the cooler in the back and was heading toward the register when she saw him. A white man, mid-30s, wearing a jacket with an American flag patch on the sleeve and a baseball cap pulled low. He was standing near the candy aisle, watching her. Not pretending to shop, just watching. Nia's instincts kicked in immediately. She put her free hand on Malik's shoulder and steered him toward the front of the store. The man stepped into the aisle ahead of her, blocking her path. "Excuse me," Nia said quietly, her voice steady. He didn't move. Instead, he looked down at Malik and smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "Your boy goes to Lincoln Elementary, right?" Nia's pulse spiked, but she kept her face neutral. "We're just trying to check out. Just making conversation," the man said, still smiling. He looked back at Nia. Funny seeing kids like him in that school. Thought they had standards. The words hit like a slap, but Nia didn't react. She couldn't. Not here. Not now. She pulled Malik closer and moved around the man without another word. Her hands were shaking as she paid for the milk. Malik was silent beside her, his small body tense. Once they were outside, Malik finally spoke. "Mom, why do people hate us?" Nia stopped walking. She looked down at her son, his big brown eyes searching her face for an answer she didn't have, or couldn't give, not in a way that would make sense to a 9-year-old. "I don't know, baby," she said finally, "but we're okay. We're going to be okay." He nodded, but she could see he didn't believe her. That night, after Malik was in bed, Nia sat on her couch and tried to calm her breathing. She kept replaying the encounter in her head. The man's smile, his words, the way he'd known which school Malik attended. A knock at the door made her jump. She looked through the peephole and saw her neighbor from across the hall, Mrs. Eleanor Dawson, an older black woman who'd lived in the building for 20 years. Nia opened the door. "Mrs. Dawson? Everything okay?" Eleanor glanced over her shoulder, then stepped inside quickly. She kept her voice low. "Nia, I need to tell you something. Those men you've been seeing around, the ones in the trucks, I've noticed them," Nia admitted. "They're calling themselves neighborhood protectors now. Community watch or some nonsense like that." Eleanor's expression was grim. "But they're not protecting anyone. They're targeting people. Families like yours. Single mothers. Anyone they think doesn't belong." Nia felt her stomach drop. "Have they done anything? Hurt anyone?" "Not yet, but they're getting bolder. I wanted you to know, so you can be careful." "Thank you, Mrs. Dawson." Eleanor reached out and squeezed Nia's hand. "You're a good mother. Don't let them make you feel like you're not." After Eleanor left, Nia locked the door and checked every window in the apartment. Deadbolt, chain, window locks. She moved through the space with practiced precision, her hands steady, her movements efficient. Too efficient for someone who'd only ever been an office worker and a waitress. She didn't realize Malik was awake until she heard his voice from the hallway. "Mom." She turned to see him standing there in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes. "What are you doing?" "Just checking the locks, baby. Go back to bed." I heard yelling outside. Nia's heart clenched. She crossed him and knelt down. "It's okay. We're safe inside." But even as she said it, she heard the voices outside growing louder. Male voices, aggressive, laughing. She guided Malik back to his room and tucked him in. "Stay here, okay? I'm just going to close the blinds." She moved through the apartment again, pulling curtains closed, shutting out the world. When she reached her bedroom, she paused at the closet door. Her hand hovered over the handle for a long moment before she finally opened it. Beneath the winter coats she rarely needed in this climate, pushed to the back corner, was an old duffel bag. Black canvas, worn at the edges with a zipper that stuck slightly from years of disuse. Nia pulled it out and set it on her bed. Her hands hesitated on the zipper. She hadn't opened this bag in almost 8 years. Hadn't needed to. Hadn't wanted to. She unzipped it slowly, revealing the contents inside. Hand wraps. Worn, faded, neatly folded. A water bottle that had long since dried out. A notebook with training schedules written in her younger handwriting. Nia stared at these remnants of a life she'd buried, then closed the bag without removing anything. She shoved it back into the closet and shut the door. Not yet. She wasn't there yet. The next evening, the neighborhood was unnaturally loud. Nia was washing dishes when she heard the commotion outside. She dried her hands and moved to the window, peeking through the curtain. A group of men, maybe a dozen of them, were gathered on the street directly in front of her building. They wore matching jackets. Some held flashlights. Others had walkie-talkies clipped to their belts. They looked official, organized. One man stood in the center, addressing the group in a voice loud enough to carry. We're here to keep our community safe, to protect the families who belong here, to make sure this neighborhood stays the kind of place where good people want to raise their kids. The words themselves were innocuous, but the way he kept glancing toward Nia's building, the way his eyes lingered on her window, made the message clear. You don't belong here. Malik appeared beside her, peering out. Who are they? I don't know, Nia lied. Just some neighbors talking. But Malik wasn't fooled. He was too smart. They're looking at our house. She pulled him away from the window and closed the curtain completely. It's okay. Come on. Let's finish your homework. But it wasn't okay, and they both knew it. That night, Nia lay in bed staring at the ceiling, doing math in her head. Rent was due in 2 weeks. She had $73 left after buying groceries. Her next paycheck wouldn't clear until the 15th. Moving meant first and last month's rent. Security deposit. Moving truck. Time off work she couldn't afford. The numbers didn't work. They never worked. She was trapped here. Geographically. Economically. Completely. The next afternoon, Malik came home from school with a drawing. Nia was making a snack when he sat on the kitchen counter in front of her. She looked down at the paper and felt her breath catch. It was their building. Simple, childlike, but unmistakable. In front of the building, he'd drawn stick figures. Big ones with angry faces. And in front of them, standing between the big figures and the building, was a small stick figure with long hair. His mother, protecting him. Is this for art class? Nia asked, her voice barely steady. No, Malik said quietly. I just wanted to draw it. She wanted to cry. Instead, she pulled him into a hug and held him tight. It's a beautiful drawing, baby. That evening, she found the flyer. She'd taken out the trash after dinner, and when she came back inside and closed the door, she noticed the white paper on the floor. It must have been slipped underneath while she was outside. Nia picked it up with trembling hands and read the words printed in plain black letters. This isn't your neighborhood. No signature. No return address. Just those 5 words. She crumpled the paper in her fist and threw it in the trash. Then she checked every lock in the apartment again. 2 days later, Nia walked into the police station during her lunch break from the medical office. The building was cold, sterile, and unwelcoming. She approached the front desk and waited for the officer on duty to acknowledge her. Can I help you? He asked without looking up from his computer. I need to report harassment, Nia said clearly. There's a group of men targeting my family. They've been following me, threatening us. I found a note slipped under my door. Now the officer looked up. He was white, middle-aged, with a mustache and tired eyes. What kind of note? Telling me I don't belong in my neighborhood. He pulled out a form and clicked his pen. And what makes you think this is harassment and not just a neighbor's concern? Nia blinked. I'm sorry. Well, ma'am, you said these men are part of a community watch program, right? Maybe they're just trying to keep the area safe. Sometimes new residents don't understand how established communities work. Her jaw tightened. They're not keeping anyone safe. They're intimidating people. Me and my son. The officer sighed and set down his pen. Look, I'll file a report, but unless they've physically harmed you or destroyed property, there's not much we can do. Have you tried talking to them? Maybe clearing up any misunderstandings? Nia stared at him, understanding flooding through her with cold clarity. There would be no help here. The system wasn't going to protect her. Thank you for your time, she said quietly, and walked out. That afternoon, she picked up Malik from school and tried to hide the defeat on her face. They were walking across the parking lot toward her car when another parent approached. A white woman in yoga pants and a designer jacket, holding her daughter's hand. "Excuse me," the woman said, her tone syrupy sweet. "I don't think we've met. I am Jennifer." "Nia." She kept walking. Jennifer fell in a step beside her. "Your son goes here, right?" "Malik." "Yes. That's nice." Jennifer smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I was just wondering, do you live in the district? Because we've had some concerns about enrollment. Making sure all the kids actually belong here." Nia stopped walking and looked Jennifer directly in the face. Her voice was calm, controlled. "My son belongs here. We live at 428 Maple Street. We're well within the district." Jennifer's smile faltered slightly. "Of course. I was just checking. You understand. We want to maintain standards." Nia didn't respond. She took Malik's hand and walked away, feeling Jennifer's eyes on her back. When they reached the car, Malik climbed into the back seat and buckled himself in without being asked. "Mom," his voice was small, "am I not supposed to be at this school?" Nia gripped the steering wheel hard enough that her knuckles turned white. "You belong wherever I say you belong. Don't ever let anyone tell you different." But she could see in the rearview mirror that he didn't believe her. And why would he? The world kept proving otherwise. Over the next week, the harassment escalated in small, calculated ways. Her trash cans were knocked over 3 times. Someone scratched a long gouge into the side of her car. Every night around 10, trucks would drive slowly past her building, engines revving loud enough to wake Malik. It was psychological warfare, and it was working. One evening, Nia was loading groceries into her car in the parking lot of the supermarket when she sensed someone too close behind her. She turned and found herself face-to-face with one of the men from the neighborhood watch meetings. Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd thought. Mid-20s, heavily muscled, confident in a way that came from never being challenged. "Need help with those bags?" he asked, stepping even closer. Nia moved back, putting the car between them. "I'm fine. Thank you." "You sure? Seems like you've got a lot to carry. Must be hard doing everything on your own." His tone was casual, but his eyes were cold. "Assessing. Testing." I said I'm fine. He took another step forward. Too close. Invading her space deliberately. "You know, this neighborhood used to be real nice. Safe. People knew each other. Trusted each other." Nia's body reacted before her mind caught up. Her stance shifted just slightly. Weight balanced. Feet grounded. Ready. For a split second, she wasn't a tired single mother. She was something else entirely. The man noticed. His eyes flickered with surprise, then amusement. He smirked. Interesting. Then he backed away, hands raised in mock surrender. "Have a good night." Nia watched him walk to a truck across the parking lot, her heart pounding. She forced herself to finish loading the groceries, her hands shaking now. She let something slip, shown something she'd kept hidden for years. That night, after Malik was asleep, Nia went back to the closet. This time, she pulled out the duffel bag and unzipped it fully. She removed the hand wraps, old and worn, the fabric soft from countless hours of use. She held them in her hands and felt 8 years of careful distance collapse. She remembered the training room, the smell of sweat and rubber mats, the sound of her own breathing as she pushed through drills until her muscles screamed. She remembered the voice of her instructor, firm but kind, teaching her not just how to fight, but how to control the fight, how to end it without becoming the aggressor. Control is more dangerous than rage. The words echoed in her memory as Nia sat on her bed, wraps in hand, staring at nothing. She hadn't wanted to return to that version of herself. That version belonged to a darker time, a time when survival meant learning to hurt people before they hurt her first. She'd promised herself she was done with that life. She'd moved, changed her name from her maiden name to Carter, started over, built something quiet and safe for Malik. But safety was an illusion. It always had been. Nia carefully folded the wraps and put them back in the bag. Not yet. She could still avoid this. By the following week, Malik had stopped asking to play outside. He came straight home from school and went directly to his room. He'd stopped drawing, stopped talking as much. He was retreating into himself, and Nia could see the damage being done in real time. One afternoon, she found him sitting on the couch, staring out the window, watching other kids ride bikes on the street. "Baby, do you want to go outside?" she asked gently. "Get some fresh air." He shook his head without looking at her. "I'm okay here." "Malik," she sat beside him. "This isn't fair to you. You should be able to play outside." "It's fine, Mom. I like being inside." But his voice cracked slightly, and she knew he was lying. He wasn't staying inside because he wanted to. He was staying inside because he was afraid, and that realization broke something in her. Avoidance wasn't protecting him. It was hurting him worse than danger ever could. That evening, there was a knock at the door. Nia checked the peephole and saw a man she didn't recognize. White, 40s, well-dressed. He wore the same jacket as the others. But he looked different, calmer, more in control. She opened the door with the chain still attached. "Can I help you?" "Evening, ma'am. My name is Evan Cole. I'm the coordinator for the Maple Street Community Watch." His voice was pleasant, reasonable. He smiled like a man running for local office. "I wanted to introduce myself and welcome you to the neighborhood." "We've been here for 6 months," Nia said flatly. "Of course. Forgive me. It's been a busy time." He glanced past her into the apartment. Not aggressive, just curious. "I understand there have been some tensions, some misunderstandings. I wanted to clear the air. There's no misunderstanding." His smile didn't waver. "I think there might be. See, we're just concerned citizens trying to keep our community safe. Make sure everyone feels welcome. But there have been complaints." "Complaints about what?" "About behaviors that make people uncomfortable. Loud music late at night. Unfamiliar cars. Things like that." Nia stared at him. "I work 2 jobs and take care of my son. We don't have loud music. We don't have parties. We stay to ourselves." Evan nodded sympathetically, but his eyes were hard. "I'm sure that's how you see it. But perception matters. And right now, people are nervous. I'd hate for things to escalate unnecessarily." The threat was clear despite the pleasant tone. "This is your warning," Evan added quietly. Then he smiled again. "Have a good evening, ma'am." He walked away, and Nia closed the door with trembling hands. She locked it and leaned against it, breathing hard. They weren't going to stop. They would keep pushing until she broke or left. And she had nowhere to go. The next day, during her break at work, Nia called her former co-worker, Lisa Andrews, a white woman who'd been friendly when they worked together at a previous office job. Nia explained what was happening. The harassment, the threats, the isolation. "I just need someone maybe talk to the police with me," Nia said, "as a witness. Someone to corroborate what's happening." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Nia, I don't think that's a good idea." "Lisa, please. I just need—" "I am sorry. I really am. But I can't get involved in something like this. I have kids too. I don't want to bring trouble to my door." "Trouble? I'm asking for help." "I know. And I'm sorry. I really am. But I can't." The line went dead. Nia sat in her car in the parking lot of the medical office, staring at her phone. She was truly alone. That night, she stood in Malik's doorway watching him sleep. His face was peaceful in a way it never was during waking hours anymore. She thought about the drawing he'd made, her standing between him and danger. That was her job, her only job, to protect him. She walked back to her bedroom, opened the closet, and pulled out the duffel bag one more time. She sat on her bed and looked at it for a long moment. Then she unzipped it and removed the hand wraps. She didn't smile. She didn't feel triumphant or empowered. She simply accepted what she'd been avoiding. If they were going to force this, then she would end it. Not because she wanted to, but because there was no other choice left. She wrapped her hands slowly, the muscle memory returning after 8 years. The fabric felt familiar against her skin, like putting on an old jacket that still fit perfectly despite the time past. When she was done, she stood in front of the mirror and saw someone she thought she'd left behind forever. Someone who knew how to survive not by hiding, but by standing her ground. Nia unwrapped her hands and put everything back in the bag. Then she hid it in the closet again, beneath the coats, out of sight. But now she knew it was there, and when the time came, she'd be ready. The flyer appeared on telephone poles throughout the neighborhood on Friday morning. Bright yellow paper, impossible to miss. Community Safety Fair, Maple Street, Saturday, 2 p.m. Meet your neighborhood watch. Nia saw one taped to the lamppost outside her building when she left for work. She stared at it for a long moment, understanding exactly what it was. Not an invitation. A stage. They were setting something up, something public, something that would force her hand one way or another. She couldn't avoid it. The event was literally on her street. And after weeks of hiding, weeks of keeping Malik inside, she knew avoidance had stopped being protection and started being prison. That evening, Malik asked if they could go. "There's supposed to be food trucks and games," he said quietly, showing her a flyer that had been handed out at school. "Can we go? Just for a little while." Nia looked at her son's hopeful face and felt something harden in her chest. He shouldn't have to ask permission to attend a neighborhood event. He shouldn't have to live in fear of walking down his own street. "Yeah, baby," she said. "We can go." Saturday afternoon arrived with clear skies and warm sunshine. The kind of day that should have felt safe. By 2 o'clock, the street was filled with families. Folding tables lined the sidewalk, offering information about various community services. A bouncy castle had been set up in the parking lot of the church on the corner. Food trucks dispensed hot dogs and ice cream. Children ran and laughed. And everywhere, men in those matching jackets watched. Nia held Malik's hand as they walked down the street. She dressed carefully that morning, choosing clothes that wouldn't restrict movement. Comfortable shoes, hair pulled back, nothing that would get in the way if things went wrong. The preparation was automatic, instinctive, drawn from years of training she tried so hard to forget. Malik wanted ice cream. They waited in line at the truck, and Nia felt eyes on her the entire time. Not hostile glances. Something worse. Anticipation. She bought Malik a chocolate cone, and they found a spot on the curb to sit. He ate happily, pointing out different things he saw, trying to make conversation. Nia responded, but her attention was divided. Scanning, assessing, counting the number of men in jackets, noting their positions, exit routes, cover. She was thinking tactically, and that terrified her because it meant some part of her already knew how this would end. "Mom, can I go on the bouncy castle?" Malik asked, finishing his cone. Nia almost said no, almost grabbed his hand and walked them both home right then. But she looked at his face, saw the hope there, the desperate desire for just one normal afternoon, and she couldn't deny him. "Okay," she said, "but stay where I can see you." He ran toward the bouncy castle, and Nia stood, positioning herself where she had a clear view. Other parents stood nearby, some chatting, some on their phones. Normal people doing normal things. She wondered if they understood what was really happening here, if they saw the trap being set, or if they were truly that oblivious. That was when she noticed several men in jackets converging slowly toward her position. Not rushed, not obvious, just gradually closing distance from different directions. Nia's pulse elevated, but she kept her breathing steady. She looked toward the bouncy castle. Malik was jumping with other kids, laughing. Safe for this moment. She started walking toward her car, parked 2 blocks down. If she could get Malik and leave now, maybe they could avoid whatever was coming. She called to him. "Malik, time to go." He waved at her from inside the bouncy castle. 5 more minutes. "Now, please." The disappointment on his face cut her, but he climbed out and jogged toward her. They walked together toward the car, Nia's hand firm on his shoulder. She reached into her pocket for her keys. Clicked the unlock button. Nothing happened. She clicked it again. The car didn't respond. No lights. No chirp. Nothing. Nia's stomach dropped. She tried the door handle manually. Locked. She peered through the window and saw immediately what they'd done. The battery cables had been disconnected. Simple. Effective. Sabotage. "Mom, what's wrong?" Malik asked. "Car's not working." She kept her voice calm. "We'll walk home. It's not far." But as she turned, she found their path blocked. Evan Cole stood there with 2 other men. All 3 wore pleasant expressions. Evan held a clipboard like he was conducting official business. Behind them, she could see more people watching now. Phones were coming out. This was exactly what they wanted. Witnesses. Documentation. A public spectacle. "Everything all right, ma'am?" Evan asked, his voice carrying enough that others could hear. Concerned. Helpful. The perfect mask. "We're fine," Nia said, pulling Malik closer. "We're going home." I couldn't help but notice you seem upset. Is there a problem we can help with? No, thank you. She tried to walk around them, but they shifted, maintaining the blockage without making it obvious to observers. Evan smiled. We've been getting complaints. About you. About behavior that's making people uncomfortable. I haven't done anything wrong. That's your perspective. But other residents feel differently. He glanced at Malik, then back to her. They feel threatened. Unsafe. Especially with children around. Nia's jaw clenched. We're leaving. Move. Now. There's no need for hostility. Evan said, his voice still pleasant but louder now, projecting. We're just trying to have a conversation about community standards. One of the other men stepped closer to Malik. Not threatening. Just close. Invasive. Malik pressed against Nia's side. Step back from my son, Nia said quietly. The man smiled. Relax. I'm not doing anything. He reached out as if to pat Malik's shoulder, a gesture that would look friendly to anyone watching from a distance. But Nia saw his intention, saw the deliberate intimidation masked as friendliness. She moved Malik behind her in one smooth motion. The man's hand instead made contact with Nia's arm. He pushed, not hard but enough. Accidentally. Malik stumbled, caught off balance by the movement. He fell, landing hard on the pavement. His knees scraped against the concrete, tearing his jeans. He cried out in pain and surprise. Everything in Nia's face changed. Not anger, not rage. Something colder, more dangerous. She knelt beside Malik, checked his scraped knee, wiped the tears from his face. The whole time, her expression remained perfectly controlled. She whispered something to him that no one else could hear. Stay behind me, no matter what. Malik nodded, eyes wide, and scrambled to his feet. He positioned himself behind his mother, exactly as instructed. Nia stood slowly, and the quality of her movement made several people nearby pause in their conversations. She didn't look upset. She looked focused, completely present, like someone who'd just made a decision and accepted all consequences that would follow. One of the gang members, a heavy-set man with a shaved head, reached out and grabbed Nia's arm. His grip was tight, fingers digging in her bicep. A clear escalation from accidental contact to deliberate restraint. You need to calm down, he said, his voice low, threatening. Before this gets out of hand. Nia looked at his hand on her arm, then up at his face. Her voice was quiet, level, and absolutely clear. Let go. He laughed, tightened his grip instead. Or what? The crowd around them had grown. People were filming now, phones held up, recording everything. Nia could see neighbors she recognized in the growing circle. Some looked concerned, others curious. Some seemed pleased, as if they'd been waiting for something like this. Evan watched with satisfaction. This was going exactly as planned. Public confrontation, multiple witnesses, her word against theirs. And when she inevitably got emotional, lost control, made a scene, they'd have everything they needed to paint her as the problem. The dangerous one, the one who didn't belong. But Nia didn't get emotional. She didn't raise her voice. She simply stood there, absolutely still, with the man's hand locked on her arm and Malik's safe behind her. Her posture had shifted completely now. Feet planted, weight distributed, balance perfect. It wasn't the stance of someone preparing to run. It was the stance of someone who'd stopped running. I'm going to ask you one more time, Nia said calmly. Let go of my arm. The man looked at Evan, grinning. She's threatening me. You all heard that. Evan nodded slowly, giving permission for what came next. I think we need to show Ms. Carter that she doesn't run this street. The man's grip tightened to painful pressure, his other hand reaching to grab her other arm. The intention was clear. Restrain her. Humiliate her. Make her struggle while everyone watched. He never got the chance. Nia inhaled once. Deep. Controlled. Centering. Then she moved. Her hand came up, not in a wild swing, but with precision, striking the pressure point in the man's wrist. His grip released involuntarily, pain shooting through his hand. Before he could react, she'd stepped to the side, redirecting his forward momentum, using his own weight against him. Her other hand guided his arm into a lock, applying pressure to his elbow joint. The entire movement took less than 2 seconds. The man's face twisted in pain as Nia controlled his arm, bending it at an angle that left him no choice but to go where she directed. She brought him down smoothly, professionally, until he was on his knees on the pavement, his arm locked behind him in a position that would cause immediate injury if he resisted. He screamed, not in rage, in genuine pain and shock. The crowd gasped collectively. Phones jerked upward, everyone trying to capture what had just happened. Nia held him there for 3 seconds, her face calm, her breathing steady. Then she released him and stepped back immediately, hands visible, non-threatening. The man collapsed forward, clutching his arm, gasping. "I told you to let go," Nia said simply. Malik stood behind her exactly where she'd positioned him, his eyes huge but no longer crying. He'd seen his mother transform into someone else entirely. Someone strong. Someone who couldn't be pushed around. Another gang member, younger and broader, rushed forward with his hands balled into fists. He wasn't thinking tactically. He was operating on ego and adrenaline, charging straight at Nia like she was a target that wouldn't fight back. She didn't meet his charge. She used it. As he swung wildly, Nia stepped inside his reach, too close for his momentum to be effective. She caught his arm, turned her hip, and used a basic judo throw that sent him flying over her back. His own force did most of the work. She just directed where it went. He hit the side of a parked car with a metallic boom that echoed down the street. The car door dented inward. The man slid down to the pavement, groaning, the wind knocked completely out of him. The crowd was no longer murmuring. It was dead silent, except for the continued sound of phone cameras recording. Nia stood between Malik and the remaining men, her posture instinctively protective. Not aggressive, not advancing, just holding her ground with absolute certainty. Evan Cole's face had gone pale. This wasn't a script. This was supposed to be intimidation, a show of force. Her crying, or begging, or getting angry enough to make herself look bad. Instead, 2 of his men were on the ground, and she looked completely calm. She attacked them, someone yelled from the crowd. "Did you see that?" She attacked those men. But multiple phones had captured everything. The first grab, the escalation, Malik being pushed, the exact sequence of who did what first. A woman nearby shouted back. They put their hands on her first. She was defending herself. The crowd began to fracture, arguments breaking out about what they just witnessed. Some saw a dangerous woman attacking community volunteers. Others saw exactly what had happened. A mother protecting herself and her child from men who deliberately provoked her. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Multiple people had called 911, though whether they were calling to report Nia or the gang was unclear. Nia didn't move. She kept Malik behind her, kept herself positioned between him and anyone who might try something else. Her hands were visible. Her breathing was controlled. She'd done nothing except defend herself, and she'd done it with the minimum force necessary to end the threat. But she'd revealed herself. After 8 years of hiding, of pretending to be helpless, of avoiding anything that might expose her training, she'd shown everyone exactly what she was capable of. The first police car arrived, lights flashing, but no siren now. An officer stepped out, hand near his weapon, assessing the scene quickly. He saw 2 men on the ground, one still clutching his arm. He saw Nia standing calmly with a child behind her. He saw the crowd with their phones out. "Who wants to tell me what happened here?" the officer demanded, his voice sharp. Evan immediately spoke up, his pleasant mask slipping back into place. "Officer, thank goodness you're here. This woman attacked our volunteers. We were just trying to have a conversation, and she became violent. Multiple witnesses can confirm. That's not what happened," someone in the crowd called out. "They cornered her. They pushed her kid. I have video," another person shouted. "It's all on video." The officer held up his hand for silence. His eyes moved to Nia. "Ma'am, I need you to step away from the child and put your hands where I can see them." Nia didn't move Malik. She raised her hands slowly, keeping them visible, but she didn't step away from her son. "I'm not leaving my child, officer. But I'm not armed, and I'm not a threat. These men put their hands on me first. I defended myself. A second police car arrived, then a third. More officers spilled out, taking control of the scene, separating people, beginning to take statements. The crowd was ushered back to give everyone space. One officer, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes, approached Nia carefully. "Ma'am, I need to speak with you. Can you tell me what happened?" "They've been harassing me for weeks," Nia said quietly, her voice steady despite everything. "Following me, threatening me. Today they sabotaged my car, surrounded me in public, and when I tried to leave, they put their hands on me and my son. I asked them to stop. They didn't, so I stopped them." The female officer glanced at the two men being helped to their feet by other gang members. Then she looked back at Nia. "How exactly did you stop them?" "I restrained them using basic self-defense techniques. I didn't strike them. I didn't injure them beyond what was necessary to end their attack." Another officer was reviewing video on someone's phone. He called over to his sergeant. "Sir, you need to see this." The footage shows clear escalation from a man. She didn't initiate physical contact. Evan Cole stepped forward, his voice rising. "She broke my volunteer's arm. Look at him. She used excessive force. This is assault." The sergeant, an older black man with gray in his hair, watched the footage twice on the offered phone. His expression remained neutral. Then he looked at Nia for a long moment, studying her stance, her calm demeanor, the way she held herself. He approached her quietly, away from the crowd. "Ma'am, where did you learn to do that?" Nia met his eyes. She could lie, deflect, make up something simple. But standing there with Malik behind her and the truth already exposed, she found she didn't want to hide anymore. "I was in a self-defense program years ago," she said simply. "Intensive training, restraint tactics. I learned control." The sergeant nodded slowly. "That was more than basic self-defense. That was professional-level hand-to-hand combat training." "Yes, sir. Why didn't you mention this when you filed your harassment report?" "Because I was trying not to be this person anymore. I wanted to avoid conflict. For my son's sake." He glanced at Malik, who was peeking around his mother's legs, then back at Nia. "Looks like they didn't give you much choice." "No, sir. They didn't." More officers were taking statements now, reviewing footage from multiple phones. The narrative was becoming clear. The gang had orchestrated a public confrontation. They'd escalated to physical contact. They'd pushed a child. And when Nia defended herself, she'd done it with precise control rather than wild violence. But the gang members weren't backing down. They were talking loudly, demanding she be arrested, claiming injury, threatening legal action. Evan Cole had already pulled out his phone, presumably calling a lawyer. The sergeant walked back to his officers, conferred quietly, then approached Nia again. "Ma'am, I'm not arresting you right now. The video evidence clearly shows self-defense. But this isn't over. Those men are going to file complaints. There will be an investigation. I understand. I need you to come to the station tomorrow and make a formal statement. Bring any documentation of previous harassment. Any evidence you have." "Yes, sir." He hesitated, then added quietly, "For what it's worth, you showed remarkable restraint. Most people in that situation would have done a lot worse. You controlled the threat without causing serious injury. That matters." Nia nodded, but didn't smile. There was nothing to smile about. She'd kept herself and Malik safe, yes. But in doing so, she'd painted a target on her back bigger than anything before. The crowd was slowly dispersing, though many people were still filming, still recording, still talking. Nia could see her neighbors looking at her differently now. Some with fear, some with admiration, some with calculation, wondering what this meant for their quiet street. She took Malik's hand. "Come on, baby. Let's go home." They walked past the officers, past the gang members who glared at them with open hostility now, past the food trucks and the bouncy castle, and all the trappings of a normal community event that had turned into something else entirely. As they reached their building, Malik finally spoke. "Mom, you were really scary, but also really cool." Despite everything, Nia almost laughed. "Almost. I'm sorry you had to see that. Are you in trouble?" "I don't know yet, baby. Maybe. But we're safe right now. That's what matters." They climbed the stairs to their apartment, and Nia locked the door behind them. She checked every window, every lock. Then she went to the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was calm. No bruises. No marks. She hadn't been hurt at all. She controlled every movement, every action, every outcome. 8 years of rust, and her training had come back like muscle memory. But her hands were shaking now, not from fear, from adrenaline finally releasing. She'd crossed a line she'd sworn never to cross again. She'd used her skills, revealed herself, become visible in exactly the way she'd spent years avoiding. And there was no going back. Nia gripped the edge of the sink and let herself shake for 30 seconds. Then she straightened, composed her face, and went back to check on Malik. He was sitting on the couch, the TV on, but ignored, processing everything that had happened. She sat beside him and pulled him close. "You okay?" "Yeah. Are you?" "Yeah, baby. I am." That night, after Malik was asleep, Nia sat on her couch with her phone in her hand. The video had already spread. She found on social media, shared and reshared, titled everything from mother defends child from racist gang to woman viciously attacks community volunteers. The comments were vicious and polarized. Half the people were praising her. Half were calling for her arrest. No middle ground. No nuance. Just rage and righteousness from all sides. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She almost didn't open it. But curiosity won. "This isn't over. You made a big mistake today. No signature." But she knew who it was from. Nia deleted the text and set her phone aside. She walked to her closet, opened it, and looked at the duffel bag. She'd used what was inside it, become what she tried so hard to leave behind. And somewhere in all the fear and exhaustion and uncertainty, she felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. She felt like herself again. Not the scared single mother hiding from shadows. Not the woman who lowered her eyes and kept walking. Not someone pretending to be helpless to survive. She was Nia Carter, and she'd just shown the world that pushing her had consequences. She didn't smile, but she didn't cry either. She simply accepted that tomorrow would bring new problems, new threats, new battles, and she'd face them standing up instead of backing down. Because they'd forced her hand, and now they'd have to live with what happened when someone like her stopped pretending to be weak. The video from the community fair had gone viral overnight, spreading across the internet like wildfire. By Sunday morning, Nia's face was everywhere. On Twitter, Facebook, Reddit threads, dissecting every frame. YouTube commentators offering analysis. Local news had picked it up, running segments with titles like "Neighborhood Confrontation Turns Violent" and "Single Mother's Self-Defense Sparks Debate." Nia sat at her kitchen table with her phone face down, unable to look at it anymore. The comments had become overwhelming. Half the internet praised her as a hero standing up to racist bullies. The other half called her a violent thug who'd attacked innocent volunteers. Death threats mixed with messages of support. Strangers demanding justice. Other strangers demanding her arrest. She'd become a symbol overnight, and symbols were never allowed to just be people. Malik was still asleep, and Nia was grateful for that. She didn't know how to explain what was happening, how to tell a 9-year-old that the whole world was watching them now, judging them, forming opinions about who they were based on 30 seconds of video. At 10 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Nia looked through the peephole and saw 2 police officers. Not the sergeant from yesterday. Different ones. Younger. One white, one Hispanic. Both looked uncomfortable. She opened the door with the chains still attached. "Can I help you?" "Ms. Carter, we need you to come to the station to give a statement about yesterday's incident. I was told to come in today. I was planning to come this afternoon. We'd prefer if you came now, ma'am." The tone wasn't requesting. It was instructing. Nia felt her stomach tighten, but she nodded. "Let me get my son ready. I can't leave him alone." "Of course. We'll wait." 20 minutes later, Nia and Malik were in the back of a police car. Not arrested, not in handcuffs, but not exactly voluntary either. Malik pressed against her side, quiet and afraid. Other kids in the neighborhood watched from their yards as they drove past. At the station, they were separated immediately. Malik was taken to a waiting area with a children's advocate, while Nia was led to an interrogation room. The walls were gray. The table was metal. A camera watched from the corner. 2 men entered. One was the sergeant from yesterday. The other was a detective she didn't recognize, older, white, with a weathered face and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Ms. Carter, I'm Detective Raymond Holloway," the older man said, sitting across from her. "I've been reviewing the footage from yesterday. multiple angles. I watched it about a dozen times now. Nia waited, her hands folded on the table. That was impressive work, Holloway continued. Professional, controlled, not the kind of thing someone learns from a weekend self-defense class at the YMCA. I told the sergeant yesterday. I was in an intensive program years ago. What kind of program? Nia took a breath. She'd known this question would come. She'd prepared for it as much as she could. After I left an abusive relationship in my early 20s, I was connected with a program that taught self-defense and restraint tactics to survivors of domestic violence. It was more comprehensive than typical classes. The instructor believed that knowing how to control a situation was more empowering than just knowing how to hit. Holloway leaned back in his chair, studying her. How long were you in this program? 2 years. 3 times a week. Sometimes more. And the instructor's name? Grace Michaels. She ran it out of a community center in Philadelphia. This was almost 10 years ago. The detective wrote something down. We'll verify that. But I have to say, Ms. Carter, what you did yesterday goes beyond self-defense training for abuse survivors. Those were textbook restraint techniques. The kind used by security personnel, law enforcement, military. Nia met his eyes steadily. Grace was former military. She taught us what she knew because she believed we deserved to never feel helpless again. I was a good student. I practiced constantly because I never wanted to be a victim again. The truth, but not the whole truth. Grace had indeed been former military. The program had been intensive, but there were details Nia left out. Details about why she needed such intense training. About what she'd been running from that required more than basic self-defense. Some truths were better left buried. The men you restrained, Holloway said, changing direction. They're claiming you broke one man's arm and gave another a concussion. They're filing assault charges, talking about a civil suit for damages. The video shows they attacked me first. They pushed my son. They grabbed me. It does show that. But their lawyer is arguing excessive force. That you could have simply walked away, called for help. That your training made you a weapon, and you chose to use it. I asked them to stop. They didn't. I protected myself and my child using the minimum force necessary. Holloway nodded slowly. I believe you. The video supports your version. But this is going to get complicated, Ms. Carter. Those men have connections, support in the community. And now that your face is all over social media, you become a lightning rod. There are people calling for charges against you. Others calling for charges against them. The DA is getting pressure from all sides. So what happens now? Now we investigate. Thoroughly. We'll interview witnesses. Review all available footage. Look into the harassment you reported. But in the meantime, you need to be prepared. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. The interview continued for another hour. They went through everything. The weeks of harassment. The convenience store incident. The flyer under her door. The parking lot confrontation. The community fair. Every detail documented, recorded, analyzed. When they finally let her go, it was early afternoon. Malik was exhausted and scared, not understanding why they'd spent hours at police station. Nia called a cab to take them home because her car was still dead in the impounded lot where it had been towed after the incident. The cab dropped them off in front of their building, and Nia immediately noticed something wrong. A news van was parked across the street. As soon as she and Malik stepped out of the cab, a reporter rushed toward them with a cameraman in tow. Ms. Carter, can we get a statement about yesterday's incident? Do you regret defending yourself? Are you worried about the charges being filed against you? Nia put her hand on Malik's back and guided him quickly toward their building entrance. No comment. Is it true you have professional combat training? Were you trained by the military? No comment. She got Malik inside and shut the door firmly behind them. They climbed the stairs to their apartment, and Malik finally started crying. Not loud sobs, just quiet tears rolling down his cheeks. I don't like this, Mom. I don't like all these people. I know, baby. I'm so sorry. It's going to calm down. I promise. But even as she said it, she wasn't sure she believed it. Over the next few days, the pressure intensified from all directions. The gang didn't approach her directly anymore. They'd learned that lesson, but they found other ways to apply pressure. Ways that didn't require physical confrontation. On Monday, Nia's landlord called. Ms. Carter, I've received several complaints about noise and disturbances coming from your unit. I'm going to need to schedule an inspection. There haven't been any disturbances. We're quiet. You know that. Nevertheless, there have been complaints. Multiple complaints. I'm required to investigate. The inspection was scheduled for Friday. Nia knew exactly what it was. Harassment by proxy. They couldn't touch her, so they make her life unbearable through official channels. On Tuesday, she got a call from Malik's school. The principal, Mrs. Sharon Hendricks, wanted to meet with her. Urgently, Nia arrived at the school that afternoon, her stomach in knots. Mrs. Hendricks was a thin white woman in her 50s with graying hair and a perpetually concerned expression. She gestured for Nia to sit in one of the chairs across from her desk. "Miss Carter, thank you for coming in on short notice. I wanted to discuss some concerns that have been raised about Malik." "What kind of concerns?" "Well, given the events of this past weekend and the media attention, we've had parents express worry about safety, about whether Malik might be experiencing trauma that could affect other students." Nia's hands tightened on the armrests. "Malik is fine. He's a good kid. He's never caused any problems." "Of course. But we have a responsibility to all our students. The school counselor would like to speak with him, just to assess his emotional state. Make sure he's coping well with everything that's happened." "You want to question my son about a situation where he was the victim?" "It's not questioning. It's support. We're concerned about his well-being." But Nia could read between the lines. This wasn't about supporting Malik. This was about building a case. Documentation that could be used later. Evidence that her situation was affecting her child, that maybe he wasn't safe in her care. "When?" Nia asked quietly. "Tomorrow morning. With your permission, of course." "And if I don't give permission?" Mrs. Hendricks's expression tightened slightly. "Then we'd have to consider whether additional steps might be necessary. For Malik's protection." The threat was clear. Cooperate or face worse consequences. "Fine," Nia said. "Tomorrow morning." That evening, she tried to prepare Malik for what was coming. They sat on the couch together, and she explained as gently as possible that the school counselor wanted to talk to him. "Am I in trouble?" Malik asked, his voice small. "No, baby. You didn't do anything wrong. They just want to make sure you're okay after what happened." "I am okay. I don't want to talk to anyone." "I know, but sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do." The next morning, Nia dropped Malik off at school and watched him walk slowly toward the entrance, his shoulders hunched, his backpack seeming heavier than usual. She wanted to grab him, take him home, protect him from all of this. But she couldn't. That would only make things worse. At noon, she got a call from Mrs. Hendricks. "Miss Carter, we need you to come pick up Malik. He's very upset." Nia was there in 15 minutes, breaking every speed limit in the borrowed car from Mrs. Dawson. She found Malik in the counselor's office, tears streaming down his face, hiccuping with sobs. "What happened?" Nia demanded, pulling him into her arms. The counselor, a young white woman with a sympathetic expression, spoke carefully. "We were just talking about his feelings. About the incident." He became emotional. "What did you ask him?" "Just standard questions. Whether he felt safe at home. Whether he'd seen violence before. Whether his mother had ever hurt him." Nia's vision went white around the edges. "You asked my son if I hurt him?" "It's protocol, Miss Carter. Given the circumstances. The circumstances where I defended him from men who attacked us. We have to consider all possibilities." Nia picked up Malik and held him against her chest, even though he was really too big for it now. She looked at the counselor, then at the principal standing in the doorway. "We're done here. Ms. Carter, this kind of reaction isn't helping." "I said we're done." She carried Malik out of the school, and he clung to her the whole way to the car. Once they were inside, doors locked, she held him while he cried. "They kept asking if you hurt me," he sobbed against her shoulder. "They asked if I was scared of you. I told them no. I told them you protect me. But they kept asking." "I know, baby. I'm so sorry. You don't have to go back there. Not until this calms down." But she knew what this meant. Keeping him home from school would be used against her too. There was no winning move. Every choice had consequences. That night, after Malik finally fell asleep, Nia stood at her kitchen window and looked out at the street below. A car was parked across from her building. Dork see it done. Someone sitting inside, watching. Not the gang's usual trucks. Something different. More subtle. Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Another text. You think you won? We're just getting started. She deleted it and set her phone down. Then she went to her closet and pulled out the duffel bag. She opened it and removed one of the old training notebooks from the bottom. Inside, in her younger handwriting, were notes from sessions with Grace. Technique, philosophies, and one line, underlined multiple times. Real danger isn't the fight. It's what comes after. Grace had warned her about this, about the aftermath, about how fighting back, even in self-defense, painted a target that never fully went away. How the real battle wasn't won with fists, but with endurance. With refusing to break under the pressure that came after the visible conflict ended. Nia closed the notebook and put it back. She trained for physical confrontation, but nobody had trained her for this. For having her life systematically dismantled by people who were too smart to give her anything she could fight against. The next day brought another blow. An official-looking letter arrived in the mail. Legal letterhead. Bold text. Notice of civil suit. Personal injury and emotional distress. The gang member whose arm she'd restrained was suing her for $100,000. Crime permanent injury. Emotional trauma. Loss of livelihood. The letter detailed how her violent attack had left him unable to work, unable to sleep, afraid for his safety. Nia read it twice, then set on the table and laughed. Not from humor, from the absurdity of it. The man who'd grabbed her, who'd been part of weeks of harassment, was now claiming to be the victim. But the laugh died quickly. Because absurd or not, it was real. Legal action required lawyers. Money she didn't have. Time she couldn't afford. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Ms. Carter? My name is James Bennett. I'm a civil rights attorney. I saw your video, and I'd like to offer my services. Nia's grip on the phone tightened. I can't afford a lawyer. I'm not asking for money. Not up front, anyway. This case has implications beyond just you. It's about standing up to organized harassment, about the right to defend yourself without being criminalized for it. I'd like to help. Why? Because what happened to you happens to people every day. And most of them don't have the ability to fight back the way you did. Most of them just suffer in silence. You stood up. That matters. They talked for 30 minutes. Bennett explained the legal landscape, the civil suit, the potential criminal charges, the harassment claims she could file and return. He was honest about the challenges, the time it would take, the scrutiny she'd face. But he was also confident. The video is your best defense, he said. It shows everything, but they're going to try to make you look dangerous. They'll dig into your past. Look for anything they can use. You need to be prepared for that. I understand. Is there anything in your past they might find? Anything that could be used against you? Nia hesitated. The training with Grace was legitimate, but there were pieces of her history before that. Things she'd buried. Things that had necessitated the training in the first place. Nothing that's relevant, she said finally. I was in an abusive relationship. I got out. I learned to defend myself so it wouldn't happen again. That's the story. Okay, stay with that. Simple, direct, true. Don't elaborate unless absolutely necessary. After the call ended, Nia felt slightly less alone. Having a lawyer helped, but it didn't solve the fundamental problem. The gang had shifted tactics completely. They weren't trying to physically harm her anymore. They were trying to destroy her life through legitimate channels. Make her existence so unbearable that she'd leave on her own. And it was working. The landlord's inspection found violations that had never existed before. Noise complaints from neighbors who'd never complained in 6 months. Suddenly her apartment was a problem. She was given 30 days to address the issues or face eviction proceedings. Anonymous calls to Child Protective Services claimed Malik was being neglected. A caseworker showed up unannounced, walked through the apartment, interviewed Malik privately. Found nothing wrong, but the report went into a file somewhere. Documentation that could be referenced later. Evan Cole appeared in public places where Nia went. The grocery store, the library, the bank. Never close enough to violate any laws. Never threatening overtly. Just there, smiling, watching. A constant reminder that she was being monitored. One afternoon, Nia was at the post office when she saw him leaning against a wall outside. She walked past him to get to her car, and he called out cheerfully, "Beautiful day, isn't it, Miss Carter?" She didn't respond, didn't look at him, just kept walking. "I saw your son scored well on his reading test. Lincoln Elementary posts those online, did you know? Public information." Nia stopped, turned. "Stay away from my son." Evan held up his hands, still smiling. "I'm not near your son. I'm standing in a public place, making conversation. Nothing illegal about that." He was right. He was doing nothing that could be reported or stopped, just existing in her orbit, making sure she knew he was always there. The pressure was relentless and came from angles Nia had never anticipated. One of her jobs cut her hours, citing business needs, but she knew the real reason. They'd seen the video, didn't want the controversy. The other job kept her on, but moved her to a less visible position. No more front desk, no more customer interaction, just filing in a back room. Her income dropped by a third. The math that was already impossible became more so. Malik stopped sleeping through the night. He'd wake up with nightmares, crying about men with flashlights outside, about his mother being taken away, about having to leave their home. Nia would hold him until he fell back asleep. But her own sleep was becoming sporadic, fragmented, never restful. She was being worn down systematically, and she could feel it happening but couldn't stop it. One evening, Mrs. Dawson knocked on the door with groceries. "Saw you'd run out of a few things," she said quietly, handing over the bags. Nia almost cried at the kindness. "I can't accept this." "Yes, you can, and you will." Eleanor pushed the bags into Nia's hands. "You're not alone, girl. Some of us see what's happening. Some of us are trying to help." "It's not enough," Nia whispered. "They're destroying everything, and I can't fight back because there's nothing to fight against." "Then you endure. You keep standing. That's how you win this." But endurance had a cost, and Nia was paying it with every passing day. A few nights later, she found a note taped to her door. Not threatening, supportive. "We stand with you. You're not alone." No signature, but it was something. The next day, another note appeared on her car. Then another on the community bulletin board at the library, specifically referencing her situation. People were paying attention. Not everyone believed the gang's narrative. Small acts of support started appearing. A neighbor offered to watch Malik after school. Someone left a bag of hand-me-down clothes that fit him perfectly. The woman who ran the corner store started adding extra items to Nia's purchases and charging her the same amount. The community was fracturing, but not entirely in the gang's favor. James Bennett called with news. One of the gang members wants to talk. Privately. Says he has information about how they've been operating. Planned harassment. Targeting other families before you. He's willing to testify, but he needs protection. Why would he turn on them? He has kids of his own. Saw what happened at that fair. Says it wasn't supposed to go that far. He wants out, but he's scared. Can we trust him? I don't know yet. But if what he's saying is true, it could change everything. It would show a pattern of behavior. Organized intimidation. Not just one incident, but systematic harassment of multiple families. For the first time in days, Nia felt something like hope. But that night, sitting alone after Malik went to bed, she looked at the duffel bag still sitting in her closet and remembered Grace's warning again. Real danger isn't the fight. It's what comes after. She'd won the physical confrontation, but the aftermath was proving far more dangerous than anything that had come before. And the battle was far from over. She stood at her window, looking out at the street where Evan's car sat watching, and made a decision. She wouldn't run, wouldn't break, wouldn't let them win by making her life so unbearable that she chose to leave. She'd stand. She'd endure. She'd fight this new kind of battle with the same control and discipline she'd used in the physical one. Because that was what survival looked like now. Not dramatic confrontation, just quiet, stubborn refusal to be broken. Day after day, decision after decision. Choosing to stay when leaving would be easier. That was the real fight, and she was determined to win it. 3 weeks after the community fair incident, James Bennett called with news that changed everything. The trial date is set. Civil and criminal proceedings will be heard together given the overlapping circumstances. 6 weeks from now, and our whistleblower is ready to testify. Nia sat at her kitchen table, phone pressed to her ear, trying to process what this meant. What are the charges against me? They're pushing for assault and battery. The DA hasn't fully committed yet, but the pressure is intense. Media coverage. Public opinion. The gang has been very effective at painting themselves as victims. But we have the video. We have witness statements. And now we have someone from inside their organization willing to expose their tactics. What does he need from me? Protection. For him and his family. He's terrified Nia. These men don't take betrayal lightly. He wants assurance that when he testifies, there will be consequences for them. Not just for him. Can you promise him that? Bennett was quiet for a moment. I can promise him we'll do everything legally possible. Whether that's enough, I don't know. But his testimony could be the difference between you facing prison time and walking free. Prison time. The words hit Nia like a physical blow. She looked down the hallway toward Malik's room, where he was doing homework, and felt her chest tighten. What I need to do? Be ready. They're going to come at you hard. Your past, your training, your parenting, everything. They'll try to make you look dangerous, unstable, a threat to public safety. We need to show the jury exactly what you are, a mother protecting her child from organized harassment. Over the next few weeks, Bennett prepared Nia for what was coming. Mock cross-examinations, questions designed to rattle her, accusations meant to provoke reaction. He was thorough and relentless, and by the end of each session, Nia felt exhausted. You're doing well, he told her after one particularly brutal practice session. You stay calm. You don't take the bait. That's exactly what we need. But staying calm in a practice session was different from staying calm when her freedom was on the line. Meanwhile, the harassment continued in subtle ways. Evan still appeared in public places, always just visible enough to be noticed. The landlord kept pushing about the violations, threatening eviction. Malik's school suggested he might be more comfortable in a different environment, code for asking them to leave voluntarily. But something else was happening too. The community support that had started as anonymous notes and small gestures was growing. A group of mothers from a neighboring area organized a fundraiser for Nia's legal defense. Local activists started showing up at city council meetings, demanding investigation into the neighborhood watch group's activities. The narrative was shifting slowly but perceptibly. One afternoon, Malik came home from school with something unexpected. His teacher had assigned a project about courage, and students could choose to present on anyone they admired. Malik had chosen his mother. He showed Nia his presentation, created on poster board with careful handwriting and printed photos. It told the story of the community fair from his perspective. How scared he'd been, how his mother had protected him, how she taught him that standing up for yourself wasn't the same as being violent. I have to present it in front of the class, Malik said nervously. Is that okay? Nia looked at her son, at this project that exposed them both to more scrutiny, and felt something shift inside her. Hiding hadn't protected them. Silence hadn't made them safer. Maybe visibility, truth, vulnerability were their real weapons now. Yes, baby, she said. It's more than okay. I'm proud of you. The presentation happened on a Friday. Malik stood in front of his fourth grade class and talked about fear and courage and his mother. His teacher recorded it, and someone shared the video online that evening. By Sunday morning, it had been viewed 1,000,000 times. The video of a 9-year-old boy calmly explaining that his mother wasn't a violent person, but a protector, that the men who'd attacked them were the dangerous ones, that courage meant standing up even when you were scared. It cut through all the noise and rhetoric in a way that adult arguments couldn't. Public opinion shifted dramatically. The comment section filled with parents relating to Nia's situation. People sharing their own stories of harassment. Others criticizing the gang's tactics. The narrative that had been so carefully constructed by Evan and his associates began to crumble under the weight of a child's honest testimony. James Bennett called that evening, his voice energized. Did you see the response to Malik's video? This changes everything. The prosecution is going to have a much harder time painting you as the aggressor when your son just humanized the entire situation. I didn't know he was going to do that, Nia said. I didn't want him in the spotlight. I know, but he chose it, and it matters. More than any legal argument I could make. The DA's office reached out 2 days later, requesting a meeting. Nia and Bennett sat across from Assistant District Attorney Patricia Hawkins, a black woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a reputation for being fair but tough. "I've reviewed all the evidence," Hawkins said without preamble. "The video footage, witness statements, your son's school presentation, the testimony from our potential whistleblower, and I've made a decision about charges." Nia's heart pounded, but she kept her face neutral. "We're not moving forward with criminal prosecution against you, Ms. Carter. The evidence clearly shows self-defense. Your actions, while forceful, were proportional to the threat. You didn't continue the attack once the threat was neutralized. You showed restraint." Nia felt Bennett's hand briefly touch her shoulder, a gesture of support and relief. "However," Hawkins continued, "we are moving forward with charges against 3 members of the Neighborhood Watch Group. Assault, harassment, conspiracy to intimidate. The whistleblower's testimony has been corroborated by our investigation. This wasn't an isolated incident. They've been targeting families for months. You were just the first one who fought back." "What about Evan Cole?" Nia asked. "He's being charged as the organizer. If convicted, he's looking at significant prison time. The others are facing lesser charges, but still substantial." After the meeting, Nia and Bennett stood outside the courthouse. For the first time in weeks, Nia felt like she could breathe fully. "It's not over," Bennett reminded her. "There's still the civil suit. They're still pushing that." "I know, but this is something. This is progress." The trial began on a cold Monday morning in late November. The courthouse was packed. Media vans lined the street outside. Protesters held signs on both sides of the issue, though Nia noticed there were far more supporting her than opposing her now. Inside the courtroom, Nia sat beside Bennett at the defendant's table while the civil case proceeded. The gang member she'd restrained, Michael Patterson, took the stand first. He described the incident from his perspective, claiming he'd simply been trying to have a conversation when she'd violently attacked him without provocation. "I was just standing there," Patterson said, his arm in a sling that looked performative rather than necessary. "She grabbed me out of nowhere, twisted my arm. I thought she was going to break it. I've had nightmares ever since. I can't sleep, can't work. I'm terrified of her." His lawyer showed photos of bruising, medical reports, therapy bills. It was a compelling narrative if you ignored all the evidence that contradicted it. Then came the video evidence. Frame by frame, the footage showed exactly what had happened. Patterson grabbing Nia's arm first, his grip tightening, her verbal warning, his refusal, only then her response. The jury watched in silence as the truth played out on the screen. Bennett called witnesses next, neighbors who'd seen the weeks of harassment. Mrs. Dawson describing the intimidation tactics. Malik's teacher talking about his fear and trauma. The school counselor reluctantly admitting her questioning had been prompted by outside pressure, not genuine concern. Then came the whistleblower. His name was David Sherman, and he'd been part of the neighborhood watch for 2 years. He took the stand looking terrified but determined. His family was in protective custody, relocated temporarily until the trial concluded. "We called it community protection," Sherman testified, his voice shaking slightly. But that's not what it was. Evan had a list. Families he wanted gone. Single mothers. Minorities. Anyone he thought was bringing down property values. We'd target them. Make their lives hell until they left. "Can you describe the tactics used?" Bennett asked. "Everything. Noise complaints filed falsely. Calls to CPS with made-up concerns. Harassing them in public places. Damaging property in ways that couldn't be proven. Evan was smart about it. Nothing that could be directly traced back to us. Always plausible deniability." "And what happened with Miss Carter?" Sherman glanced at Nia, then away. "She was supposed to be easy. Single mom, 2 jobs, no support system. Evan thought she'd leave within a month. But she didn't. She kept staying, kept fighting through official channels. It made him angry, so he escalated. The community fair was supposed to be the final push. Make her look unstable in public. Get her to react emotionally. Then use that to justify forcing her out. What went wrong? She didn't react emotionally. She defended herself professionally. It exposed us. Evan didn't plan for that. The prosecution tried to discredit Sherman, suggesting he was lying to get a plea deal. But his testimony was too detailed, too specific. Bank records showed payments to people who'd filed complaints against targeted families. Text messages revealed coordination of harassment activities. The evidence supported everything Sherman said. When Evan Cole took the stand, he maintained his innocence, claimed the neighborhood watch was legitimate, that any harassment was the actions of individuals, not the group, that he'd never ordered or condoned targeting anyone. But then Bennett played a recording. Sherman had worn a wire to their last meeting, where Evan had explicitly discussed strategies for making Nia's life unbearable. His own words condemned him. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. They found in favor of Nia on the civil case. Patterson's claims were dismissed. No damages awarded. The self-defense argument held completely. More importantly, the criminal case against Evan and the others proceeded. Guilty verdicts on harassment and conspiracy charges. Evan faced 3 years in prison. The others received lesser sentences and probation. Restraining orders were issued. The neighborhood watch was officially disbanded. The men were prohibited from coming within 500 feet of Nia or Malik. When the verdicts were read, Nia didn't smile or celebrate. She simply closed her eyes and let the relief wash over her. It was done. After the trial, Nia stood outside the courthouse with Malik beside her. Reporters called out questions, but she ignored them. Bennett handled the media, giving a prepared statement about justice and standing up to organized harassment. Nia just wanted to go home, but as she walked toward the parking lot, she saw Evan being led away in handcuffs. For a moment, their eyes met. She expected to see anger or hatred. Instead, she saw disbelief. He genuinely couldn't understand how he'd lost, how someone like her had beaten someone like him. Nia looked away and kept walking. He wasn't worth her attention anymore. 2 weeks later, Nia and Malik packed their belongings into a moving truck. Not because they'd been forced out, not because they were running, but because Nia had made a choice. They were moving to a different neighborhood across town. Better schools, lower crime, a fresh start. But this time, she was choosing it. On her terms, with savings from a fundraiser and a new job that paid better than her previous 2 combined. She was moving forward, not running away. Malik was excited about the new place. His new school had a robotics program he wanted to join. He'd made friends online through the support that had surrounded them during the trial. He was smiling again, laughing again, being a kid again. On their last night in the old apartment, Mrs. Dawson came by with cookies and hugs. "You did good, girl. You stood when a lot of people would have fallen. I couldn't have done it without people like you," Nia said honestly. "Yes, you could have. You're stronger than you know. But I'm glad you didn't have to." The new apartment was in a quiet complex with a playground and a community garden. Malik ran around exploring while Nia unpacked boxes. She found a duffel bag at the bottom of one and paused. She opened it and looked at the hand wraps, the training notebooks, the remnants of a life she tried to leave behind. For a moment, she considered throwing it all away, starting completely fresh. But then she thought about grace and the lessons that had saved her life. About control being more dangerous than rage. About standing up being different than lashing out. Those lessons still mattered. Would always matter. She kept the bag but put it in the back of her new closet. Available if needed, but hopefully never necessary again. A month into their new life, Nia received an unexpected phone call. It was Grace Michaels, her old instructor from Philadelphia. "I saw the news," Grace said, her voice warm and familiar. "Saw what happened. I wanted to reach out." "Grace," Nia breathed, surprised by how emotional hearing that voice made her. "I used everything you taught me." "I know. I watched the video. You did it perfectly. Controlled. Proportional. Exact. I never wanted to use it again. But when you needed it, it was there. That's why I taught you those things, Nia. Not so you'd use them, but so you'd have them if you had no other choice." They talked for an hour, catching up on years apart. Grace was still teaching, still running programs for women who needed to learn strength without violence. She invited Nia to visit sometime, bring Malik, let him see where his mother had learned to be strong. After the call, Nia felt something settle inside her. The past and present reconciled. The person she'd been and the person she was now coexisting without conflict. She started teaching a self-defense class at the community center in her new neighborhood. Just basic techniques, nothing advanced, but focus on the same principles Grace had taught her: control, restraint, knowing when to act and when to walk away. The class filled up quickly, mostly women, some abuse survivors. Others just wanted to feel safer in the world. Nia taught them not to be fighters, but to be capable, to have options, to never feel helpless. One evening, a reporter from a local news station asked for an interview about her new life. Nia almost declined, but then she thought about Malik's school presentation and how truth had mattered more than silence. She agreed. The interview aired on a Wednesday evening. The reporter asked about the trial, about the harassment, about whether she regretted fighting back. Nia looked directly into the camera and said something she'd been thinking about for weeks. "I don't regret defending myself. I regret that I ever believed silence was safer than standing up. I spent years trying to be invisible, thinking that would protect me and my son. But it just made us targets. The moment I stopped apologizing for existing, stopped accepting abuse as normal, that's when things changed." "What would you say to other people facing similar situations?" the reporter asked. "Document everything. Find allies. Use every legal resource available. But most importantly, don't internalize their narrative. They'll try to make you believe you're the problem, that you're too aggressive, too sensitive, too difficult. Don't accept that. You have a right to exist peacefully. You have a right to defend yourself. You have a right to stand your ground." The interview went viral, reaching even further than the original incident video. Nia received hundreds of messages from people sharing their own stories, thanking her for speaking up, asking for advice. She couldn't respond to everyone, but she read them all. Each story reminded her why speaking up mattered. Malik's new school thrived. He joined a robotics team and made close friends. His nightmares stopped. His smile returned fully. He was just a kid again, not a child carrying trauma. One Saturday morning, he was building something with his robotics kit at the kitchen table while Nia made breakfast. He looked up at her suddenly and asked, "Mom, are you happy now?" Nia paused, spatula in hand, and really thought about the question. Was she happy? After everything? The harassment, the trial, the fear, the struggle? She looked around their new apartment. Sunlight streaming through clean windows. No threats outside. No fear inside. Malik healthy and thriving. A job she didn't hate. A community that had welcomed them. "Yeah, baby," she said, meaning it completely. "I'm happy." "Good," Malik said, returning to his project. "You deserve to be happy." Such a simple statement from a 9-year-old. But it carried weight. Because for so long, Nia hadn't believed she deserved happiness. Had thought survival was enough. That keeping her head down and making it through each day was all she could ask for. But she deserved more than survival. They both did. 6 months after the trial, Nia received notice that Evan's appeal had been denied. His sentence was being served in full. The other gang members had completed their probation and left the area. The neighborhood she'd lived in had changed, new families moving in, the intimidation tactics gone. Justice, imperfect and slow, had eventually arrived. Nia took Malik to visit Grace in Philadelphia over spring break. They spent a day at the old community center where Nia had trained. Grace showed Malik the training room, explained what his mother had learned there, why it mattered. "Your mom was one of my best students," Grace told Malik. "Not because she was the strongest or the fastest, but because she understood control. She learned that real power isn't about dominating others. It's about protecting what matters." Malik looked at his mother with something like awe, seeing her through new eyes. On the drive home, he was quiet for a while. Then he said, "Mom, when I'm older, can you teach me what Grace taught you?" Nia glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Why?" "So I can protect what matters too. Like you protected me." Nia's eyes stung with tears, but she blinked them away. "Yeah, baby. When you're older, I'll teach you. But remember, the goal isn't to fight. It's to not have to fight. To be strong enough that people know not to test you. To be calm enough that you don't need to prove anything." "I know. Control is more dangerous than rage." Grace told me. Nia smiled. The lessons were being passed down. Not violence, not aggression, but strength, control, and the wisdom to know when to use them. That evening, back home, Nia stood on the balcony of their apartment watching the sunset. She thought about everything that had happened. The fear, the fight, the aftermath, the victory. She hadn't won by hurting anyone. She'd won by refusing to let them break her, by standing firm when running would have been easier, by using her voice when silence would have been safer. She heard the door open behind her and felt Malik's presence. He came and stood beside her, looking out at the same sunset. "Mom," he said quietly. "Yeah, thank you for not giving up, for staying, for fighting." She pulled him close, kissed the top of his head. "I'll always fight for us, baby. Always." As darkness fell and lights began appearing in windows across the neighborhood, Nia felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not just safety, not just survival, but peace. Real, deep, earned peace. She'd stood when everything in her wanted to run. She'd fought when silence seemed easier. She'd exposed her vulnerabilities and found strength in them. She'd survived. But more than that, she'd shown Malik how to stand, how to endure, how to be strong without being cruel, how to protect without becoming the aggressor. Those lessons would last longer than any bruises, would matter more than any verdict. And as she stood there with her son beside her, safe and free and choosing their own path forward, Nia understood something fundamental. Victory wasn't about defeating her enemies. It was about refusing to let them define who she was. They hadn't won because she'd hurt them. They'd won because she hadn't let them destroy her. And that made all the difference. When people try to break you down simply because they think they can, do you stay silent to survive? Or do you stand up knowing it might cost you everything? If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories of courage and justice.